She whispered his name to the spirits at midnight, her blood mixing with honey and ancient clay. By morning, his eyes finally saw her. By evening, his heart was no longer his own. But when you bargain with the unseen world, the debt always comes due. And sometimes, it comes for everything you thought you'd won. This is the story of Nkiruka, a woman who stole love from the spirits, and the terrible night when the ancestors came to collect what was owed. Some debts can only be paid in truth. Others are paid in soul. Let me take you back to where it all began. Nkiruka had perfected the art of being invisible. Not literally, of course. She existed, she breathed, she moved through the world like everyone else. But to the people who mattered, to him, she might as well have been a ghost haunting the edges of his vision, desperately hoping to be seen. Every Sunday morning for 2 years, she'd wake at dawn to prepare her stall at the Ogige market in Enugu. While other traders positioned themselves for maximum foot traffic or proximity to the main road, Nkiruka chose her spot based on a single criterion: visibility. Not of her goods, but of Obiajulu, Nwafor. His family's stall sat 3 rows down, a sprawling display of imported electronics and household goods that spoke of old money and established connections. But it wasn't his family's wealth that drew her. It was him. Obiajulu was the kind of man mothers prayed their daughters would marry. Tall and solid, with the kind of face that wore kindness naturally. She'd watched him help elderly women carry bags of rice to their cars, refusing tips with a self-depreciating laugh. She'd seen him break up disputes between hot-headed traders with calm words and steady hands. Once, she'd witnessed him give his own umbrella to a child caught in the rain, standing there, getting drenched, while the little boy ran home dry. He was educated, too. Everyone knew he'd studied engineering in Port Harcourt, graduated top of his class. Now he worked with his father, but people said he had plans, ambitions, the kind of future that could shelter a family through any storm. Nkiruka had tried everything to catch his attention. She'd bought new Ankara fabrics in bold, eye-catching patterns, the kind that made other women stop and ask where she got them. She'd changed her hairstyle monthly, braids one week, a silky weave the next, then cornrows styled in intricate geometric patterns that took hours to complete. She even joined the church social committee after learning he attended the monthly meetings, volunteering for every bake sale and fundraiser, positioning herself in his line of sight. Nothing worked. His eyes would sweep past her like she was furniture, part of the landscape, wallpaper in human form. And the worst part? He wasn't cruel about it. He wasn't deliberately ignoring her. That would have hurt less. No, he simply didn't see her. To him, she genuinely did not exist as anything more than another face in the crowded marketplace of life. She'd watch him laugh with other women, the daughters of wealthy families, university-educated girls who spoke fluent English and carried themselves with casual confidence. They'd lean in close, touching his arm while making some joke she couldn't hear, and he'd smile that devastating smile, and Nkiruka would feel something dark and desperate coil tighter in her chest. At night, alone in her small room behind her mother's house, she'd imagine different versions of herself. Richer, more educated, lighter-skinned perhaps, wasn't that what men like him preferred? She'd catalog her inadequacies like wounds, too dark, too poor, too ordinary, too invisible. Her mother noticed, of course. Mothers always do. "Nkiruka, you're wasting away over a man who doesn't know you exist," she'd say, worry creasing her forehead. "There are good men who would see you. Why torture yourself?" But Nkiruka couldn't explain it. How do you tell your mother that some desires lodge themselves so deep in your soul that they become indistinguishable from need? That she'd built entire futures in her mind, children with his kind eyes, a home where she'd finally belong, respect from the community as Mrs. Nwafor? It was her grandmother who'd planted the seed. Or rather, her grandmother's memory. Mama Arese had died 3 years earlier, But before the end, when the fever made her speak truths she'd normally keep locked away, she gripped Nkiruka's hand with surprising strength. "Our mothers knew things," she whispered, her eyes bright with fever, and something else, knowledge that predated missionary schools and church pews. "Women in our bloodline, we've always known how to speak to the spirits, how to ask the Alusi for favor when the world turns its back. Your great-grandmother called the rain during drought. My mother ensured her business never failed. And she paused, a strange smile at her lips. I made my grandfather see me when he only had eyes for another." At the time, Nkiruka had dismissed it as fever talk. But as the months passed and Obiajulu's indifference remained absolute, those words echoed louder and louder in her mind. Women in our bloodline knew how to make themselves seen. The decision came on a Thursday night in the rainy season. Nkiruka had stood in the rain outside the community hall, watching through the window as Obiajulu laughed at something Chiamaka Okonkwo said. Chiamaka, beautiful, wealthy Chiamaka with her perfect English and her father's oil money, they weren't dating, not officially, but everyone whispered, everyone knew. Nkiruka watched water stream down the window glass, distorting their shapes into watercolor blurs, and something inside her broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet snap, like a thread pulled too tight for too long finally giving way. She went home, dug through her grandmother's old belongings that her mother had stored in a metal trunk, found what she was looking for: a small leather pouch containing dried herbs and a piece of paper with an address written in her grandmother's spidery handwriting. Mama Nnonyelum, Forest Shrine, 3 miles past the old missionary school. She told her mother she was visiting a friend. She told herself she was just going to look, to see if the place even existed. She told herself many lies that night. The path into the forest was older than memory, worn smooth by generations of feet seeking what the modern world couldn't provide. As Nkiruka walked deeper into the trees, her phone's signal died, the bars disappearing one by one like witnesses fleeing a crime. The air grew thicker, heavy with moisture and something else, a presence that made the hair on her arms stand up. She almost turned back 3 times, but each time she thought of Obiajulu's smile aimed at someone else, and she kept walking. The shrine appeared suddenly, as if the forest had been hiding it until the last possible moment. It was a small clearing where the trees formed a natural cathedral, their branches interlocking overhead to block out the sky. In the center sat a structure that was part hut, part altar, wrapped in red cloth that had faded to rust, surrounded by clay pots and offerings in various stages of decay. And sitting in front of it, as if she'd been expecting Nkiruka specifically, was Mama Nnonyelum. The old woman was ancient in a way that transcended age. Her skin was dark as fresh-tilled earth, mapped with wrinkles that seemed to tell stories in a language Nkiruka couldn't read. But it was her eyes that made Nkiruka's breath catch, clouded white with cataracts, yet somehow seeing more than regular eyes ever could. Those eyes fixed on Nkiruka with an accuracy that shouldn't have been possible. "You want love that isn't freely given," Mama Nnonyelum said. Her voice was dry leaves crackling, old leather creaking. It wasn't a question. Nkiruka's prepared speech died in her throat. I just want him to see me." The old woman's fingers moved over a set of cowrie shells, reading them like Braille. "See you, notice you, love you, choose you. All different things, but you think they're the same. They're not." "I don't care about the difference," Nkiruka said, surprised by the desperation in her own voice. "I just want him. I've tried everything else, everything normal. Nothing works." Mama Nnonyelum was quiet for a long moment, her fingers still moving over the shells. Finally, she spoke, and there was something like pity in her voice, and something like warning. "Love magic is binding magic, child. You understand? It doesn't create love. It creates obligation, compulsion. It ties two souls together with spiritual rope. But rope is not the same as choice. The spirits, the Alusi, they can weave your path with his. But the cost. She paused, her white eyes seeming to look through Nkiruka to something beyond. The cost is always higher than you think. I'll pay it, Nkiruka said immediately, whatever it is. You say that now. You all do. The old woman sighed. The spirits are not gods, child. They don't operate on faith or mercy. They are traders. They deal in balance. You take something that wasn't meant to be yours. Eventually, they come to trade back. You understand? Nkiruka nodded, though she didn't understand. Not really. Not yet. It will cost you 3,000 naira for the materials, Mama Nnonyelum said, suddenly businesslike. And you must bring me 7 red feathers from a cock that never crows at dawn, a castrated rooster, you understand. Also, clay from where 3 rivers meet. You know such a place? Nkiruka thought of the confluence near her village, where the streams merged during rainy season. Yes. Good. Bring these things and bring a photograph of the man. And bring... She leaned forward, her white eyes boring into Nkiruka's soul. Bring your certainty, because once we begin this, there is no undoing. The spell will run its course, 3 years or until death, whichever comes first. And when it ends... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Nkiruka returned 3 days later with everything requested. The feathers had been hardest to obtain. She'd had to travel to a neighboring village and pay a farmer double what they were worth, spinning a lie about a traditional ceremony. The clay she'd collected herself at dawn, the water cold against her ankles as she dug into the riverbed where the 3 streams became one. The ritual was performed under the new moon, when the sky was a black canvas and the only light came from a small fire Mama Nnonyelum built using specific woods, oji, udala, and akpu. The smoke rose straight up, defying the wind, as if being pulled by invisible hands. Mama Nnonyelum arranged the feathers in a circle, placed the clay in the center, then added items from her own collection, dried herbs that smelled of earth and decay, cowrie shells that clicked together like teeth, a small mirror that seemed to reflect nothing even when held directly in the firelight. His full name, she commanded. Obiajulu chukudi nuafo, Nkiruka whispered. Louder! The spirits are old and their hearing is not what it was. A joke, but not really. Obiajulu chukudi nuafor, Nkiruka said, her voice cracking. Now your blood. Mama Nnonyelum handed her a small blade, and Nkiruka cut her palm, not deeply, but enough. The blood welled up dark in the firelight, and she squeezed it out to drip onto the clay, watching it seep into the earth-colored mixture. The old woman added honey next, thick and golden, then began mixing it all together with her gnarled fingers while chanting in a language Nkiruka didn't recognize. It might have been Igbo, ancient Igbo, before colonial tongues reshaped it, or it might have been something older, the language of spirits and soil, of roots and rivers. The words rose and fell in rhythms that seemed to match Nkiruka's heartbeat, and the air grew heavy, thick like breathing underwater. The fire flared suddenly, impossibly high, and Nkiruka saw shapes in the flames, or she thought she did, figures, watching, listening, judging. Mama Nnonyelum's voice grew louder, more insistent, calling out specific names. Agwu, weaver of fates and teacher of craft, I call you. Ani, Mother Earth who binds all contracts, I call you. Amadioha, thunder that shakes truth from lies, bear witness. The temperature dropped so suddenly
that Nkiruka's breath misted in front of her face, despite the fire. Something was there, something vast and old and utterly unhuman, pressing against the edges of the clearing like a curious child pressing its face against glass. Mama Nnonyelum took the mirror, that strange mirror that reflected nothing, and held it up to Nkiruka's face. Say his name into the glass. Pour your desire into it. Let the spirits see what you want. Nkiruka leaned forward and whispered into the mirror, Obiajulu chukudi nuafor. I want you to see me, to love me, to choose me, to be mine and no one's else's. The mirror remained dark, but she felt something shift. Like reality itself had been slightly rearranged, pieces of fate reshuffled to accommodate her desperate wish. Then Mama Nnonyelum threw the entire mixture, blood, honey, clay, herbs, feathers, into the fire. The flames turned green, then blue, then a color Nkiruka had no name for. The smoke that rose from it was thick and black and seemed to move with purpose, coiling through the air toward her like a serpent made of shadow. It surrounded her, pressed against her skin, forced its way into her nose and mouth until she was choking on it, until the world spun and went dark. When Nkiruka came to, she was lying on the ground outside the clearing, dawnlight filtering through the trees. Mama Nnonyelum stood over her, looking older and more tired than before. It is done, the old woman said simply. The spirits have heard. They have agreed. You and Obiajulu Nwafor are now bound. His heart will turn toward you like a flower toward the sun. He will see you, want you, pursue you. Within 3 months, he will be unable to imagine life without you. Nkiruka sat up, her head spinning. And the cost? Mama Nnonyelum's expression was unreadable. The cost is already paid, child. You just don't know it yet. The spirits gave you 3 years. Use them wisely, because when the 3 years end, they will come for their trade. And they always collect what they're owed. What will they take? Nkiruka asked, fear finally penetrating her desperate determination. That depends on you, the old woman said cryptically, on what choices you make, on whether you learn what this is meant to teach you. But they will come, child. They always do. Now go. Your new life is waiting. Nkiruka stumbled home as the sun rose, her palms still aching where she'd cut it, her mind reeling. Part of her didn't believe any of it had really happened. Maybe she had fallen asleep in the forest and dreamed the whole thing. Magic wasn't real. Spirits weren't real. This was 2022, not 1722. But when she got home and looked in the mirror, she saw the reflection of someone changed. Not physically, she looked the same, but something behind her eyes was different, harder, darker, more determined. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with it.
The next Sunday, everything changed. Nkiruka set up her stall as usual, hands trembling slightly as she arranged her fabrics. She'd barely slept, oscillating between excitement and dread, wondering if anything would be different or if she'd wasted 3,000 naira and a week of anxiety on an old woman's theatrics. Then Obiajulu arrived. She felt it before she saw him, a strange pull, like a thread tied around her ribs being gently tugged. She looked up, and his eyes were already on her. Actually on her. Seeing her. For the first time in 2 years, Obiajulu Nwafor was looking directly at Nkiruka, and his expression was confused, curious, like he'd just discovered something that had been in front of him all along, but somehow invisible until this exact moment. He started walking toward her stall. Nkiruka's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This was happening. It was actually happening. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice was everything she'd imagined. Warm, deep, genuinely kind. "I know this might sound strange, but have we met before? You seem so familiar." She found her voice somehow. "We're both here every Sunday. Our stalls are close by." "Right, yes, of course." He smiled, and it was like sunrise. "I can't believe I haven't noticed you before. I'm Obiajulu." "I know, I'm Nkiruka." "Nkiruka," he repeated, like he was tasting the name, savoring it. "That's beautiful. It means the best is yet to come, doesn't it?" She nodded, stunned that he knew the meaning, that he cared enough to translate it. "Do you, I mean, would you like to get lunch sometime?" The words came out of his mouth like they surprised him, like he hadn't planned to say them but couldn't help himself. "Yes," she said immediately. "Yes, I'd like that." His smile widened and something in his eyes went distant for just a moment. A flicker of confusion, like someone trying to remember a dream. Then it passed, and he was fully present again, fully focused on her, and Nkiruka felt that strange pull again, stronger this time, the thread between them tightening. They had lunch that Tuesday, then dinner that Friday, then suddenly they were seeing each other 3 times a week, then every day. It was intense, immediate, overwhelming, the kind of whirlwind romance people write songs about. But there was something slightly off about it, something Nkiruka noticed but refused to acknowledge. Obiajulu's love was absolute, total. He looked at her like she was the only woman in the world, spoke about their future, with utter certainty, introduced her to his family within weeks, with complete confidence that she was the one. His devotion never wavered, never questioned, never doubted. It should have been perfect. But sometimes, late at night, Nkiruka would awake and find him staring at her in the darkness, his eyes open but somehow empty, like a house with all the lights on, but nobody home. And when she'd ask what he was thinking about, he'd blink, slowly, like coming back from somewhere far away, and say, "Nothing, just admiring you. I love you so much." The words were right. The tone was right. But it felt rehearsed, automatic, like a recording playing on a loop. She pushed the unease away. She'd gotten what she wanted, hadn't she? Obiajulu loved her. His family welcomed her. Within 6 months, his mother was asking when they'd start discussing bride price, already calling Nkiruka daughter, and including her in family decisions. The wedding was beautiful, a proper traditional ceremony, followed by a church service that left half the congregation weeping with joy. She wore 3 different outfits, each more elaborate than the last. And when Obiajulu looked at her, his eyes shining with what everyone called love, she almost believed it was real. Almost. On their wedding night, after the celebrations ended and they were finally alone, Nkiruka studied her husband's face in the soft lamplight. He was smiling at her with that same absolute devotion, that same unwavering certainty. "I can't believe how lucky I am," he said, "that I found you, that you're mine now." The words made her feel sick and thrilled in equal measure. Mine. But was he hers? Or was she possessing him? A thief wearing a bride's dress? "Do you remember the first time you saw me? Really saw me?" she asked quietly. He frowned, thinking. "At the market, right? 3 years ago?" 2 years ago, she corrected. "And before that, the years we were both there every Sunday?" His frown deepened. I don't remember. It's strange, isn't it? It's like you suddenly appeared in my life fully formed. Like before that day there was just nothing, a blank space where you should have been." He laughed, uncomfortable with the observation. "But that's just how memory works, right? We don't remember every moment, only the important ones." Nkiruka didn't answer. She just pulled him close and tried to silence her doubts with physical closeness, tried to make the magic feel real through sheer force of will. Their first year of marriage passed in a strange haze. To the outside world, they were perfect, the couple everyone envied.
Obiajulu's business thrived under mysterious, fortunate coincidences. Nkiruka's market stall became inexplicably popular. They moved into a beautiful house in a good neighborhood. His family adored her. Her family was proud of the match. Everything was perfect. Except the nightmares. They started around month 8. Nkiruka would dream of the forest, of Mama Nnonyelum's white eyes staring through her soul. She'd dream of shadows with too many limbs crawling across their bedroom ceiling, of voices whispering in that ancient language she didn't understand, and hands, invisible, insistent, pulling at her skin like they were trying to take something back. She'd wake up gasping, covered in sweat, and Obiajulu would reach for her automatically, his eyes still half closed, and say, "I love you," in that rehearsed voice, and she'd feel more alone than ever. Because she'd started to realize the horrible truth. She hadn't won love, she'd purchased a performance. Obiajulu went through all the motions perfectly, the affection, the attention, the devotion. But there was no spontaneity to it, no unpredictability. He loved her the way a programmed machine follows its code, perfectly, consistently, without any variation that might indicate actual choice. Real love was messy. Real love had fights and doubts and moments of taking each other for granted. Real love had to choose itself every day. This wasn't real love. This was binding. This was possession. And slowly, terrifyingly, Nkiruka began to understand what the spirits would take as payment. Not her memories, or her wealth, or her future children. Something worse. They would take her ability to ever trust that she was genuinely loved.
Because how could she ever know now? If the magic had made Obiajulu love her, could anyone ever love her naturally? Was she lovable at all? Or had she always been invisible? Always been someone men's eyes slid past, and this forced devotion was the only way she'd ever experience the appearance of being chosen. The certainty gnawed at her, especially on nights when Obiajulu held her and whispered declarations that sounded more like symptoms than sentiment. Then, on the morning of their second anniversary, she woke to find a red feather on her pillow. One single red feather, exactly like the one she'd brought to Mama Nnonyelum's shrine 2 years before. Her blood turned to ice. The girl appeared that same afternoon. Nkiruka was alone. Obiajulu had gone to work, moving through his day with that same programmed devotion that now made her skin crawl. She'd been staring at the feather for hours, turning it over in her hands, when someone knocked on the door. The girl looked about 19, dressed simply in a plain wrapper and blouse. But her eyes were ancient, knowing, exactly like Mama Nnonyelum's had been before the cataracts clouded them over. "Good afternoon, Sister Nkiruka," the girl said politely. "My name is Oge. May I come in?" Every instinct screamed at Nkiruka to slam the door. Instead, she stepped aside, knowing somehow that this visitor couldn't be denied. They sat in the living room, this beautiful living room, in this beautiful house built on lies, and Oge looked around with an expression that might have been pity. "My grandmother passed last month," Oge said without preamble. "Mama Nnonyelum, you knew her." Nkiruka's mouth dried up. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be. She lived 7 generations and was ready to join the ancestors. But before she went, she told me about you. About the binding spell, about the debt that would come due in 3 years. Oge's eyes fixed on Nkiruka with uncomfortable intensity. 3 years is almost up, sister. The spirits are getting restless. I don't understand. What do they want? They want balance restored. You took something that wasn't meant to be yours, a man's free will, his natural path, his genuine choice. The spirits gave you 3 years to experience what you thought you wanted. Now they're asking, was it worth it? Nkiruka's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was doing. Didn't you? Oge's voice was gentle but uncompromising.
My grandmother said she warned you, that she explained it was binding, not love, that there would be a cost. You chose not to hear. It was true. Nkiruka had been so desperate, so certain that having Obiajulu would solve everything, that she had ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every moment of doubt. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now the binding begins to break. The spell lasts 3 years or until death. You're approaching 3 years. Already you've probably noticed changes." And Nkiruka had. Over the past weeks, she'd caught Obiajulu staring at her with increasing confusion. He'd started hesitating before saying, "I love you," like the words were becoming harder to access. Twice, he'd called her by the wrong name, once Chiamaka, once another woman's name entirely, before correcting himself with a disturbed expression. The spell was unraveling. The binding was coming loose. "When it breaks completely," Oge continued, "he'll remember everything, every moment of the past 3 years, but from outside the compulsion. He'll remember loving you, but he'll also remember the feeling of not being able to stop loving you, of being trapped inside his own devotion, watching himself make choices his true self never would have made. And he'll know somehow that it wasn't natural, that something was done to him." "Oh, God," Nkiruka breathed. "There's more. The spirits are owed their payment. For 3 years of false love, they'll take 3 years of your ability to trust in genuine affection. Every time someone says they love you, you'll wonder if it's real or if you've somehow manipulated them without realizing it. You'll question every kindness, doubt every devotion, sabotage every relationship, because you'll never be certain it's not another binding wearing the mask of choice." "That's not fair," Nkiruka said, knowing even as she said it how childish it sounded. "The spirits don't deal in fair. They deal in balance. You stole 3 years of authentic experience from Obiajulu. They take 3 years of authentic experience from you. It's equivalent exchange." Nkiruka put her head in her hands. She destroyed everything, not just her marriage, not just Obiajulu's trust, but her own ability to ever believe she deserved love. "However," Oge said, and Nkiruka's head snapped up, "anything, I'll do anything. Break the binding yourself, tonight. Tell Obiajulu the truth, all of it. Confess what you did, why you did it, how you violated his will and his choice. Let him see you completely, including the parts that are ugly and desperate and wrong. Face his anger, face his disgust, accept his rejection. Walk away from this house, this marriage, everything you built on lies. Leave with nothing but truth." "But I'll lose him." "You never had him," Oge said, not unkindly. "You had a bound spirit wearing his face, a puppet dancing on spiritual strings. You've been married to your own desperation, not to a man." The words landed like blows, each one true, each one devastating. "If you do this, if you choose truth over illusion, confession over continued deception, the spirits will respect it. You'll still lose him, you'll still lose everything, but you'll keep your soul intact. You'll keep your ability to trust future love. You'll pay the debt in honesty instead of in spiritual punishment. And Obiajulu," Oge paused, "Obiajulu will be free. He'll be hurt, angry, betrayed, but he'll be free. His life will be his own again." Nkiruka sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the afternoon sun slanted through the windows of this beautiful house. She could hear children playing in the street, their laughter floating through the air like a reminder of innocent joy she'd long ago sacrificed for desperate want. "What if I don't?" she finally asked. "What if I just let it run its course? Then when the binding breaks, and it will break, probably within the week, Obiajulu will suddenly wake up as if from a 3-year nightmare. He'll look at you with horror and confusion. He'll demand answers you won't be able to give honestly.
He'll leave anyway, but he'll leave not knowing what was done to him, carrying that violation in his spirit without understanding it. And you'll carry your punishment, the inability to ever trust love, knowing you chose to let it happen rather than face the truth. The choice was clear, even if the path was agonizing. Oge stood to leave. I'll know by tomorrow what you decided. The spirits will know too. They're watching now, waiting to see if you've learned anything from these 3 years. Wait, Nkiruka called as Oge reached the door. Your grandmother, Mama Nnonyelum, did she regret helping people like me? Oge turned back, a sad smile on her young face. My grandmother said that the spirits don't offer these bargains to test people's morality. They offer them to teach lessons that can't be learned any other way. She said that everyone who came to her seeking to force love was really seeking to force their own worthiness. And worthiness can't be forced. It has to be built from truth, accepted with humility, grown through genuine connection. The spell was never really about binding him. It was about showing you that binding someone doesn't make you worthy to be chosen. After Oge left, Nkiruka sat alone in the growing darkness. She didn't turn on the lights, she just sat, thinking about everything she'd done, everything she'd destroyed, everyone she'd hurt, especially herself. Obiajulu came home at 6, like clockwork, his briefcase in hand, his smile automatic. "Hello, my love," he said, the words coming sluggishly now like a record player winding down. "How was your day?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw that she'd been refusing to see for 3 years. The slight emptiness behind his eyes, the mechanical quality of his affection, the way he moved through their marriage like a man walking through a dream he couldn't wake up from. She'd done this. She'd stolen 3 years of his life. She'd violated him in ways that had no name, no law, no proper punishment except the one she'd carry in her own soul forever. "Obiajulu," she said quietly, "we need to talk."
They sat across from each other at the dining table, this table where they'd hosted dinners, celebrated anniversaries, made plans for a future that was built on sand. Nkiruka's hands shook. She'd rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times since OJ left, but now that it was here, the words stuck in her throat like broken glass. "Before you met me," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "or before you remember meeting me, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to all of it before you react. Can you do that?" Obiajulu's expression flickered. Confusion, concern, something underneath that might have been relief at finally being allowed to question what had always felt wrong. "Okay? 3 years ago, I was in love with you. No, that's not right. I was obsessed with you. I'd watch you at the market every Sunday and you never saw me. Not once. For 2 years, I was invisible to you, and it destroyed me. It made me feel worthless, unlovable, like I was fundamentally wrong somehow." She paused, gathering courage. Obiajulu said nothing, but his eyes had sharpened, become more present than she'd seen them in years. "I found out about traditional ways to make someone see you, to make someone love you."